Michael Buffer, man. Tee this up.
It's time.
Let's go.
5 rounds for the. Nah, I'm just starting this. But I get up here and do it though. Don't play with me.
Let's rock, man. Hey, you know what, Flannel Sam? I know that you're ready to present this. JB Smooth, I know you're ready, man. I'm eager because what you kind of teased during the break, it got me kind of like, let's rock.
No, it's a fun conversation. And when Ryan Ermanni was watching the Super Bowl, or at least assume when he was watching the Super Bowl, he had a thought that I think a lot of us had, JB. The Philadelphia Eagles defense proves the Lions should do whatever they have to do to go get Myles Garrett, period. And on the surface, I 100% agree, and I echoed that when I read the tweet. However, a couple of folks from Pride of Detroit had a counter. Start with the Jeremy Reisman one, if you would, Mr. JB Smooth. Eagles D-line and how they acquired them. He's more of an advocate for draft and develop, or at least not give away your draft picks for Myles Garrett. Nolan Smith, first round. Jalen Carter, first round. Jordan Davis, first round. Brandon Graham, first round. Going all the way back to Brandon Graham.
Right.
Old Grandpa Graham at this point. And Josh Sweat, fourth round. And then Al Karsten actually added a couple of more in the subtweet, which is Milton Williams, third round. Jalix Hunt, third round, and Moro Ajomo, seventh round. So as we can see, the Eagles have done an excellent job in drafting defensive linemen, and they deserve a ton of credit for that. It's actually ironic that their big offseason signing, Bryce Huff, was terrible this year, and he was healthy scratch for the Super Bowl, and it didn't even matter because they had drafted so well. That's just a funny footnote. And when I saw this, I'm not going to lie, it made me think for a second. But Ryan Ermanni said something on yesterday's E&E show that really had the light bulb go off in my head. And we don't have the clip, but I'll just tell you what he said and how I interpreted it. What these guys at Pride of Detroit are saying, like, my response right now is, and? Okay, the Eagles did it that way and it worked. Ryan Ermanni basically said, okay, and maybe the Lions should have prioritize the defensive line in the draft a little bit more. Maybe, maybe not. But the reality is that you don't get do-overs. You don't get to go back and take Jalen Carter instead or Jordan Davis instead. I'm not saying that you should have, but even if you did, you don't get the opportunity to. You have to work with what you have now. And here's the reality. We love Brad Holmes. We respect Howie Roseman as the GM of the Eagles. He's one of the best in the league as well. Since 2021, the Eagles have done it differently than the Lions. The Eagles have prioritized the defensive line more than the Lions. They have drafted 3 in the first round since 2021, and the Lions have only drafted 1, and that's Aiden Hutchinson, the best of the bunch, but still, it's something that the Eagles have prioritized more. But the Lions in those drafts, instead of Nolan Smith, they got Jack Campbell. Instead of Jalen Carter, they got Jahmyr Gibbs. Instead of Jordan Davis, they drafted Jamison Williams. They have been more busy shoring up other positional groups and making them elite, while the Eagles have done a better job in terms of drafting defensive linemen. If you even want to go to the Milton Williams one, Milton Williams, the Lions could have had Milton Williams. Instead, they drafted Levi Onwuzurike. Say Levi Onwuzurike was fine this year, but Milton Williams would have been the better pick. He's been healthy and he's been productive, and Levi Onwuzurike has certainly not been healthy. And the Lions, unfortunately or fortunately, during some of those drafts, they have addressed the defensive line differently with a guy like Broderick Martin, dud so far, with a guy like Josh Paschal, who's okay, but he's injured too much and he's a jag. James Houston, phenomenal flash in the pan rookie year, but when the Lions were in the playoffs, contributed bupkis. Even last year, the Eagles decided to prioritize defensive line in the first round with Jalix Hunt, who was very productive, and the Lions waited to do it until the sixth round with Mekhi Wingo. And for the record, I'm not saying that the Lions did anything wrong. It's just the Eagles didn't need with how they drafted on the defensive line. That is what they shored up, and it made its real arrival announcement to the world on the biggest stage, the Super Bowl, and how they fucked Patrick Mahomes' life. They did. That's just how they did. And I don't blame Lions fans for being like, okay, let's do what we have to do to maybe trade for a Myles Garrett. And for the record, The Eagles did a move like this similarly, but the different position. The Eagles needed a number 1 wide receiver. 2021, the Eagles were a 9-8 team. Devontae Smith was a number 1, even though he's not a number 1 receiver. He's better as a number 2. Their number 2 receiver was Quez Watkins. Remember that guy? I don't either. The point is, they went and made a trade. They traded a first-round pick, and they traded a third-round pick for A.J. Brown, a position that they needed, that they wanted to shore up. And ever since then, A.J. Brown has 4th in the NFL in receiving yards in the past 3 years with over 4,000 and helped them get to a Super Bowl and then win one. And I'm not even saying that the Lions have that far to go on the defensive line. The point is, back then, an A.J. Brown trade was available to the Eagles, and they did it. They said F a couple of picks, and it worked out. I think this is the time, since the Lions haven't prioritized the defensive line as much on the draft as, say, the Eagles, to go after a Myles Garrett since he is available and since the Lions have the cap space and since they have the draft capital to get something like that done. Yeah. I'm not saying that it's over if the Lions don't get Myles Garrett. I'm just saying that we can't look at what the Eagles did in drafting the defensive line and say, like, all I get from that is like, okay, that's what they did. The Lions have not drafted the defensive line as well, but they have drafted other positions significantly better, like wide receivers, like safeties, like running back, et cetera, et cetera. They need to shore up they could use some shoring up on the defensive line as well, and the Eagles could have used some shoring up on the wide receivers back in 2022, and they did it, and we'll see what the Lions do.
And it's still to be determined, because if I'm judging this defensive line without Aiden Hutchinson, then I'm going to say you have to add something to it. But if Aiden Hutchinson is there, then what are we talking about? The situations are just different between what the Eagles were last night. You're talking about going back 8 years for the Eagles. This thing is just getting started for the Lions, and they're already at Super Bowl window. So it's like they don't have the time realistically to say, well, we can draft players, 5, 6, 7 years ago and wait for them to be Super Bowl ready. The Detroit Lions are in the middle of a window right this instant. And that was been some of like what our perspective has been. You really want to be able to go and get a player who can help you take best advantage of what your window is right now. It'd be different if the Lions window was 2 to 3 years from now projected. We're just looking for them to maybe compete for the division, maybe win a playoff game. But the Lions said, F all that, and they kicked the door down. Year 3, we're in this. Year 4, we're in this. And that to me is what makes this such a different argument, and where I do agree more with Ryan Ermanni. This is not the beginning of a rebuild. This is us trying to punctuate a Super Bowl window with which many fans, because there's a lot of people, including Terry Foster, who had to cancel plans down in New Orleans this year. There was a lot of fans who, including myself and others, who believe this was the year, and it didn't get done. And that's where I'm just like, you know what? If this was at the beginning of the rebuild, yeah, sure, you probably want them to have fared better, but you can't, like you said, you can't go back in time. They're at where they're at right now, and right now it's time to win a Super Bowl. I believe Myles Garrett does that better for you next year, this coming season, than a draft pick. That's just me.
Yeah, and for the record, I don't have any problem with what Brad Holmes has done in the draft.
He's drafted pretty damn good, if you ask me.
He's drafted amazingly. It's just the defensive line has not been something that he has prioritized as much as maybe we would like. And that's it. That's all. I just think a Myles Garrett move, since he said that he wanted to be traded, is the right one. And we can't just copy the Eagles' method, because the Eagles' method, what's done is done, and what we've done is done. It's not like come on.
I see Herb Nash. He says, so Eagles stocked the defensive line and signed skills. Lions stocked the skill and now need to sign D-line. No. I believe that the Lions' defensive line, healthy, is good enough to go out there and be one of the best in the NFL. I believe that Myles Garrett, what we saw in the Super Bowl, was something different. There was just a completely different level that those teams were at than where the Lions were at. And that's where I'm just to be determined, like, is their defensive line to that level? I believe it. I do. But if you add a Myles Garrett to it, I just think that you're playing with absolute dynamite. This, again, for me, everything is in the focus of a Super Bowl, because you guys are right. He's done well, not just drafting, but also going out there and signing. Who doesn't like the prospects of a healthy, line of Ali McNeil, DJ Reader, Hutchinson, Zadarius Smith? Like, who doesn't like that? Yeah. That's a really formidable line. And that's where I'm just like, what has Brad Holmes not done to make sure this defensive line has? They just got caught, knock on wood, with catastrophic historic amounts of injuries that if I just had to bet on this, I don't think would ever happen again, knock on wood. But that's what happened last year. And that's where I wonder, like, when people are talking about what they want to do, are they keeping in mind that our defensive line is still some dogs? Aiden Hutchinson put up stupid stats in 4 games.
Yeah, no.
Come on.
Go ahead, William.
Bam.
They got the tools to fix it this year, but it didn't turn out as planned. But once you get the pieces together, like a Myles Garrett, then it'll be a different story.
I mean,
That's what up, though, KG?
yeah, no, like I think people have to look at there's different ways to build a team. And with Brad Holmes, what he came into, this defense was absolutely desolated. Like, they had nothing, absolutely nothing to build off of. So they had to build this thing from scratch. And Brad Holmes, along the way, has prioritized defense. I think a majority of his draft picks throughout the 4 years have been mostly for defensive players. Now, some have worked out more than others, but ultimately, I do believe that, you know, what you were saying, Koolaid, is kind of right. When we're fully healthy, we might not be as good as the Eagles, but we're right there. We're right there in that conversation. And we're just looking at a Lions team now in which we just need to make specific tweaks to specific areas of this team. And Brad Holmes has shown me that he's willing to go out and do that. Look out how he rebuilt the secondary this past year. So if he prioritizes a position and decides, okay, this is a weakness, I need to improve it, he will go out and do that. So I think that, you know, he does see what we see as fans. He's shown that in the past. And I do think there's a chance that he could see this defensive line as being the last piece to the puzzle, and he might go out and try to improve that. Now, once again, it may not be the Myles Garrett move, and that's okay if it's not. But you may have to get creative in how you want to do this going forward, because you are in the Super Bowl window. Your draft picks are not going to be high first-round draft picks, much like the Eagles had, you know, building up their defensive line. There is going to be some you know, caveats in which you're going to have to maneuver a little bit if you're Brad Holmes. You're going to have to find ways to acquire talent for this team that's ready-made and that can help this team win right now.
Yeah, I see you, big Con 51.
Shout
I want
out.
Detroit to get absolute dogs in the defensive line. I don't care if they got to get them from the penitentiary.
I mean, the penitentiary.
I feel you, man, but it's like, I just want to ask you guys this question real quick. Ball knowers, Flannel ball knowers, KG, JB in the building, and we got Mr. Baker with the elite flash hoodie. I see you, Xavier D. What additions, just off the top of your mind, the additions that Brad Holmes made to the defense last year? Because he made a lot of investments, and that's where I'm like, how are people tripping on Brad Holmes right now?
Let me give my point of view on this. I'm not tripping on Brad Holmes. I'm not saying that the picks that the Lions made in place of like the Jordan Davises and the Nolan Smiths and the Jalen Carters. I mean, they're freaking Jack Campbell, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Jameson Williams for crying out loud. I'm not saying that they were bad, you know, getting guys like Branch. I mean, I could go on and on and on. What I didn't like about the tone of Pride of Detroit, and this is where my issue comes from, is that it seems as though they're trying to be smartest man in the room. They're trying to be like, well, the Eagles did it this way and the Lions should just stay the course and they need their picks. It's as if they're actively not wanting Myles Garrett just to prove a point and just because they're just so fetishizing draft picks so much, when it's been proven that Brad Holmes does not prioritize the defensive line like the Eagles do and Howie Roseman, and that's not a bad thing. They've still been able to get a Zadarius Smith in the midseason and a DJ Reader in the offseason as well. That's all that I'm saying, is that it does no good to post what the Eagles have drafted because they are philosophically different. Not better, different.
And we're not going to act like Howie Roseman didn't go out there and make big free agent signings, like he didn't go out there and make moves. And the Lions are right there. Like, our team, we are one of the elite teams in the NFL. So clearly Brad Holmes' method of building this thing works. Now, would we like him to make specific tweaks? Sure. I don't think that's not believing in Brad Holmes, because one thing I've been critical of is just, okay, I think it's time to maybe not take so many chances on injured guys at this point in the Lions' trajectory.
Like,
you know, the discount, getting guys for a discount, I get why you do it. I understand it. But when you look at just what Marcus Davenport did for us, when you look at Emmanuel Mosley, these type of players, when you're in a Super Bowl window, you can't have these type of things happen, man. So that's my only gripe with Brad Holmes, but that's not really a gripe. I trust what Brad Holmes is going to do. He has an eye for this thing, and he's built it up as such.
Because I actually like the fact that DJ Reader, for the large part, I know he missed some games, but for the large part, he was available. Yeah. I know we all expected that he was going to probably miss some games in the season, but David Flesser, I see you in the chat. He says getting just Myles Garrett is not going to get you where you want to go.
Yes, it is. What the F are you talking about?
From a talent standpoint, yes, the hell it is.
What the F are you talking about?
Now, if you want to be technical and they got to go out there and show it on the field, sure. But Myles Garrett with Aiden fucking Hutchinson and Aleem McNeil and DJ Reader on the same defensive line.
What the F is this guy talking about? What are you talking about? It would be the greatest pass rushing duo we have
of this generation. Yes, especially in Lions history.
With oh my!
No, look, boy, you talk about stopping mobile quarterbacks, right? You can keep your linebackers home if you got those two on the edges, and DJ Reader and Aleem McNeil in the center.
Quarterbacks wouldn't have 2 seconds to breathe, bro.
Please,
that's what gets me. Look at Flannel.
Please tell me that you didn't spread your seed. Please, we needed to stop with you saying stuff like that. Oh my goodness, bro.
All right, I got to be Sam's manager. Reel it in, Sam.
What do you want to do, bro? What would your move be?
You got Sam. Reel it in. Reel it in. Come on now. I got to be Mr. Fuji for Yokozuna over here. Reel it in, dog. It's all right.
What's the reason? What up, though?
You got Big Willie over here conducting it. Big Willie over here conducting.
Flannel, breathe. Inhale. Just inhale, bro.
It's an ongoing job. Will, it's an ongoing job. This job never stops. So it is what it is.
Yeah, Flannel, you just got to breathe over there, man. You can't teach everybody. But, I mean, I agree with KG. Teams are just built different, and there's a lot of ways to build a team. Brad has his way. He believes in developing this young talent from the draft. He sees something in that. He has an eye for that as well, too. Amazing track record as it is. But I get people's concerns. Like, what is it going to be a year or two down the lines when those draft picks don't hit and you're getting upset that you haven't taken a huge swing and just said F them picks and went out and got a Myles Garrett or someone of that caliber as well, too. So I can see how everyone's a little nervous with that Super Bowl window closing a little bit.
Well, and the reason, and let's just be honest, the reason that we can and should look at the Philadelphia Eagles as a model, even if we don't necessarily want to, is because they got it done. The Lions still have not. I love what Brad Holmes has done in building this team. I just think that a Myles Garrett move is something to be prioritized. I'm not saying Garrett or bust or Garrett or they're not going to be a good defensive line. They actually could still be a great defensive line without him. The actively not wanting him because of picks gets on my nerves. That's all.
Yeah. And DNCNT, he says, when you're in a Super Bowl window, you need discounted, sometimes injured players. When you have top paid defensive end, safety, quarterback, wide receiver, tight ends, wide receiver
I get it,
twos.
but like, how did Davenport and Mosley work out? I'm not saying that some haven't, but like, they have been probably even worse availability than their injury history would have led on.
And Emmanuel Mosley and Davenport were two players that you were relying on coming in the door.
Yep.
Like Emmanuel Mosley was supposed to be a number 2, arguably number 1 corner on this team at one point.
We remember the news.
Davenport was supposed to be your starting edge rusher opposite of Hutch, and we got 2 games out of him. Like, I'm not saying the method doesn't work with some players, and I'm not saying he needs to just get rid of it completely. But as far as relying on some of these players to get you to that next level, I don't think they should be the players that you do that with.
You're right.
That's it.
Because he started off, and I appreciate it. DNCNT is viewing it the right way. We got to look at everything the Lions are doing right now with the lens of Super Bowl.
Right.
And sometimes that comes with leveraging your future for what you can do right now. You know who I don't think is really, really crying over the spilt milk right now? Rams fans. Because they have a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
they have a Super Bowl, and they did get some decent football.
They survived after that. And
Exactly.
when you have Brad Holmes, you're never really effing them picks and mortgaging your actual future. This guy is so good at identifying talent. He's so good at drafting
Anywhere in the draft.
Exactly. This is why I keep trying to tell people the draft is going to be there regardless. He can really go out there and do both. Y'all want him to draft a guy? He can still do that. But as far as going out and getting a guy that's available like a Myles Garrett, he can also do that as well. And I think just because for so long, Lions fans, we've been allergic to moves like this. The organization hasn't really, been in the position to even think about making moves like this. But now that we're in this position and you are right there competing for a Super Bowl amongst the elite teams in the NFL, why not? You can go make a move like that and still go in the draft and get somebody.
Hey, hey, this for what I see you. I'm not gonna read it yet, but I see you. Dante151. If y'all see it, dog, that's hilarious. Dante151 $4.99 super chat. He says, people do need to realize if Lions don't get Garrett, and I agree with this, the Lions could go after players like a Hendrickson.
Yeah.
Obviously, the pipe dreams of Crosby and a Parsons in a trade, for example, relax. And I do believe that there are some other options that are out there. Myles Garrett is just the lightning rod for the conversation, obviously. We want to see them go and make themselves look as freakishly over the top as the Eagles.
And that's what it is, because he's an option that instantly puts you over. There's no debating. There's no questioning. There's no, I got to see it first. He automatically puts you in the Super Bowl conversation as in terms of winning it, not just being a favorite.